Hi, my name is Ann Kent. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I'm the owner of Peas and Happiness. And today I have a very special guest. This is Dr. Michelle Quirk. She is a pediatrician, but today she is putting on her hat as a running coach. She also owns Mindful Marathon and coaches one-on-one clients to get them started with running. So she recently wrote a guest blog post and is here today to share a little bit of her story and talk about some of the most common myths that she's encountered with getting started with running, and to offer you some tips for you to start if that's something that you are interested in. So Michelle, do you want to add anything to your bio? Is there anything I missed here?
No, thank you so much, Anne. Thank you for allowing me to be here and to write the post. And I'm just very excited to talk to you.
Absolutely. I think it's so great that you have this focus on people who are just getting started. I think that that's like where a lot of people really struggle, is like with the stereotype threat that they're not good enough to do some type of sport. So it's really cool that you're breaking down that barrier. Do you want to share a little bit about your personal journey to running and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, sure. I think that the most important thing to know about me is that I was not always a runner. So it's never too late for you out there. I was a kid who, struggled through the mile run in school and huffed and puffed my way around the track. And I used to stare at the track team and think they were made of different genetics than I was. So I was not a runner growing up and not very athletically inclined. And I came to the sport, I tried it a lot of times and quit a lot of times. And I had a lot of friends who were runners, and I saw how much enjoyment they got out of it. And I really tried it so many times and struggled along the way. So what really stuck, it was about 9 years ago, I went through a pretty difficult time in my life, and I had finished my residency and had just started, my first attending job, and was studying for board exams, and yeah, moved to a new place, newly married, like all of these kind of life stressors. And my dad was diagnosed with cancer around that time. And so I found myself really just thinking, I'm telling my patients and families to exercise and take care of themselves, and here I am not doing the same thing. And so I decided to lace up my sneakers and just start going, 5 minutes around the block where we lived. And I stuck with it for a couple of weeks. And I noticed that while I was out there, a lot of the thoughts and everything that was going on elsewhere really quieted down for me. And I started to look forward to that time. And 5 minutes became 10, became 15, became 30. And I ended up signing up for my first, 5K, which was something that I had thought about for probably several years. And I just never brought myself to do it for a lot of reasons, a lot of myths that I believed at the time. And yeah, I ran my first K and ever since a 5K, and I've been running ever since. So that's the backstory.
That is really cool. It's so interesting to hear you talk about your background of not loving running, because I feel like I've met a lot of healthcare professionals, and I'm actually, one myself who, when I was in high school, I was not an athlete and then discovered it later in life. So I think that's such a good message to tell people. And it's such a common, the word that keeps coming to mind is stereotype threat, that these myths that we sort of believe about ourselves that are not necessarily true, but they're sort of reinforced because that's what we say to ourselves. So that's
Yeah.
just so interesting.
Yeah, for sure. For many years, I told myself I was not a runner. And even, yeah, like the first several start lines, I would stand there and think like, I don't belong here. I'm not a runner. So it followed me for a long time until I started changing that narrative. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, that's really great. So the first myth that you mentioned in the post was that running is too hard. So tell me a little bit about like where that comes from and how you move past that.
Yeah, I have a lot of people tell me like I love what you do, but running is just way too hard for me. And I was one of those people too. So I always say, it's a matter of just having some realistic expectations, and you can start from anywhere. And starting with walking and going really, really slowly, like slower than you think you need to go, it's okay to start there. Like we have this vision in our mind that we have to be fast or we have to go a certain distance, but we don't. Like you can start really. I went around the block. I don't know what pace I was going. I didn't have any kind of a running watch or fancy equipment at the time, so I was probably going very slow. But it was a place to start. So it's just important to kind of, yeah, remember that we all start from somewhere, and even the most experienced runners out there, they were beginners once, and it's okay. It's okay to start where you're at, and you can make it easy on yourself. It doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you said that you literally started with like 5 minutes and then it went to 10 minutes, because I definitely think that that's a similar, like, oh, if I'm not exercising for 30 minutes, then it's not worth it. But that's really not true at all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and
oh,
you can, if you do other exercise, you pair it with your other exercise that you're already doing. So you can do 5 minutes and do something else, or walk for 5 minutes, do some running for 5 minutes, walk for 5 minutes. You've got a 15-minute workout.
yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. We have a comment here. So,
Oh, yeah.
someone who used to run, but then stopped and has been walking quite a lot, it looks like 5 to 6 miles a day. But a friend of hers says that running would be better. So, and she is 60, so a little bit later in life. Not, no.
Yeah. No, no, that's great. Okay, first of all, this is fabulous. My mom is a brisk walker, and she does probably between 4 and 6 miles, like most of the days of the week. I would say it would be safe to do some run walk intervals. So maybe not changing all of the walking into continuous running, but doing but doing run walk intervals would be safe. And my mom will say, "Oh, I'm not a runner," but she does a little bit of jogging in there. She'll do a mile and then do maybe like 10 or 15 seconds of jogging, and then walk another mile and another 10 or 15 seconds of jogging. So I think it would be safe to start with an interval that is reasonable to you. I don't think you have to just change everything to running, but the walking is a great exercise. So, stick with it, really. It's wonderful.
It's amazing. I'm guessing, and maybe you can speak to this, but it probably has to do with like where your heart rate is. So if the pace of walking is pretty brisk, then you're probably getting that moderate intensity exercise, and may or may
Yeah.
not have huge leaps and bounds of benefit from running versus walking if you're doing that intentionally.
Yeah, and I would say if you enjoy the walking and it's working for you, stick with it. It's really about what makes you happy. If you want to try to put in a little bit of jogging, go for it. But if you're happy where you are, I think you're in a great spot.
That's great. Great. Okay, so myth number 2 was that I could never run like that. So maybe this is kind of similar actually to this comment of, I'm walking now, like, should I be running? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think runners come in all shapes and sizes and ages. And I
Mhm.
think, when I started, I envisioned probably, yeah, like what I would see on the high school or college track or cross country team. And when I think of a runner. And now, having been at lots of different road races and having so many friends in the running community, like runners look like everybody, right? You and I in all shapes and sizes. And so I think, yeah, abandoning the fact that you have to have a certain pace to call yourself a runner, abandoning that you have to go a certain distance. Like at what distance do you say? A mile, 5 miles, I don't know, a marathon. So yeah, like it's just about um, starting where you're at, embracing your current fitness, and being okay with with letting go of the fact that we can look different. And runners, yeah, you don't have to. Yeah, it's keeping it simple. I like to keep it simple. So yeah, you do belong at the start line. That's really the message that I want to send. And if you look around, at first, you might see, or I know this was how it was for me. I would look around and see everybody who didn't look like me. But now, as the years have gone by, I see the people who are like me. So I found my people, and starting Mindful Marathon helped me find my people too.
I love that. It fits really nicely into the Hayes model, the healthy at every size, that our health is not determined by what our physical appearance looks like. It's really about what you're doing to take care of yourself.
Yes,
That,
yes.
that's so cool. Julie has another question here. She says, do you think it's best to mix up the workouts? Which I think is an excellent question, something that I talk about a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I think, again, this is like finding what you like to do. So if you have certain exercise that you do already, I know I have a lot of friends with spin bikes, Pelotons and things like that, and they love that. And they're thinking about adding in some jogging or run walk. I would say start small with whatever you do. So if you're not a regular runner or run walker, maybe you take one day of the week and turn one of those other workouts that you do into a running workout. But it's great to mix it up, and you don't have to, all of a sudden run 6 days a week, right? You can work it in and do, start with one day and then two, maybe three. Find what works for you. So that's all about, yeah, kind of working with what you have so far. If you're coming from the couch, I would always recommend start with walking. Like walking is the greatest next move from the couch. So you start there and then you kind of add in things. But cross training is great. The closest thing to running in terms of like the aerobic exercise would be cycling. So a lot of my runners, and I know personally when I've gone through injuries, like I really try to keep up my cycling to keep the running fitness. It's pretty close to it. It's not the same, but pretty close.
I'm guessing that running and walking use slightly different muscle groups because I definitely notice a difference if I haven't been doing one or the other, and then I do a lot of one that I'm sore the next day, probably because of those muscle groups.
Yeah, yeah. So what you could do if you want to experiment with the run walk intervals, maybe do it for 5 or 10 minutes in your regular walking workout, and just try that. If you do it twice a week, so you have a couple of days in between to recover from it and see how it goes. And keep a little journal. This is a tip that I use with my athletes. We keep a training log, so we've got the training plan, but then also when you do the training, how do you feel when you get back, and kind of how was your effort? Did anything hurt? Was anything sore? Weather, things like that. So kind of keep track for yourself and see what works for you.
It's really cool. I love that idea. So, your third myth that you wrote about was that exercise or that running specifically is punishment. So, tell us where
Yeah.
and how to get over that one.
Yeah, a lot of people tell me this too, like, oh, why would I ever run? Like running is just like the worst thing, it's punishment. And I think that comes from people who I've noticed who were athletes maybe in their younger years, and in whatever sport they were active in, running was often used as punishment. Like if you didn't make the goal or didn't, yeah, didn't complete the activity, like you would have to go run laps or the whole team would have to go run laps. So it has this negative association. So yeah, trying to change that thought is a really hard one because people have a little bit of like, it's like post-traumatic stress from that that time, and often people were young when that was kind of ingrained, so they just have this negative association with running. So trying to let that go, and yeah, not thinking that this is something you're doing for yourself, for your fitness, like it will help your body and your mind to feel good. And once we get into a routine, a week or two in, people are like, oh, it's so nice, and I didn't know what I was missing. But it takes a little bit of a leap of faith to kind of get back to it if you have a lot of negative thoughts wrapped up in it. So yep, just keep it easy on yourself, start low, go slow, all those
Yeah, that
things.
makes a lot of sense. It sounds like, I mean, you really have to be in tune with your body and listening to your body. And when you find that pace that feels good, then maybe you can overcome some of those. You can kind of like prove your brain wrong that actually
Yeah.
this isn't necessarily the way it has to be.
Yeah, like you don't have to go out and run sprints or run the lap as quickly as possible or anything like that. You can do it for your own enjoyment. It's okay.
That's really great. So if someone wants to get started tomorrow, what are like one or two things that you would have them do? Do they need to go buy shoes? Do they need to like sign up for a gym membership? Like,
No,
okay.
unless you want to, but I would say, okay, the footwear issue, let me get to that in a minute. I will say go in your closet now after we're done here and see what you have. I wouldn't go buy a pair of running sneakers just yet, but look at what you have in the closet. That'll be okay if you want to get out there tomorrow. And if let me separate into two groups. If you're coming from the couch, so if you're not regularly exercising, I would start with walking. So start with walking, and you can do what I said, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. If you're feeling good, extend it and walk for a little while longer. If you are a regular walker, like the question we had, if you're a regular walker or a regular cyclist, or you use machines at the gym like the elliptical, but you're thinking like maybe I'd like to try running, I would say I have a technique, we call it the mailbox technique. But if you're out in the neighborhood for a walk, warm up, walk for 10 minutes, and then give yourself maybe 10, 15 seconds of a jog interval between the mailboxes. And you can use any stationary object. So lampposts, stop sign,
That's great.
mailboxes work. And so you don't need anything fancy, no, watch or phone or anything. You could just jog between the mailboxes. Give yourself it's like just a little bit of a run walk interval, doing it simply, and then, recover, walk for a few more minutes. And when you feel it and you want to go again between the mailboxes, go for it. So that's like the easiest way to do a run walk interval without getting fancy and interval timers and all of that kind of stuff. Now, then when you think that you like it and you're ready for a pair of running sneakers, go to the running store. If you have a running store, I know some people, I live in Philadelphia. There's a lot of places to go, but a running store will help you. They fit people, all types of runners, for shoes all day long. That's sort of their expertise. And so I say, my favorite sneaker is not necessarily going to be the sneaker that works best for you. And I use different brands too, but there's so many. And if you look online, you'll go down the rabbit hole and get overwhelmed. And so just go ask them. They'll put it on you and watch you on the treadmill and see, how your legs look and how your feet look, whether your feet turn in, you have more of a flat arch or not. So all of those things factor in. But yeah, for tomorrow, just use what you have in the closet.
That's great advice. And I think you actually have a video explaining some of this. I think I watched that. That's super helpful. Maybe we can post that. So if anybody.
Yeah. It's all about sneakers.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I so appreciate this. Do you want to let people know how they can find you online?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This is great. And I love all the questions. So thank you for asking. Yes, you can find me. Let's see. Let me give you the website is mindful-marathon.com. So you can find most of the links, and the sneaker video is on my YouTube channel, which is also called Mindful Marathon. And if you want to connect on social media, I'm on Instagram at mindful.marathon, and Facebook is Mindful Marathon.
Great. I love it. Well, I will post a couple of freebies that you have if anybody wants to get started. I think you have one about getting started with walking. And what's your other one that you have?
Yeah, so the one is, if you're coming from the couch, it's called the Couch to Confidence Walk Plan. So it's 4 weeks to get you walking pretty regularly. And then the other one is a workshop on how to get started with running. So that's more if you are a regular walker or you do other exercise but want to try running, that would be the one to download.
Great. I love it. And those will, if you do download those freebies, that'll get you on your mailing list. And so you will receive any other updates. Hopefully we'll have some more goodies coming in the future. So any other last minute thoughts you have?
I don't think so. That was great, Anne. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I so appreciate this. And I look forward to working with you in the future and getting out there and running. So
yeah, same here.
all right. Take care, everybody.